If you're a science fiction fan, then you might be interested in today's video, where we're talking about 10 books that take place out in space. So stick around. Hey everybody, Roger here, and welcome to my channel, Roger's Reads. So recently I was watching a video by someone who says that they cannot stand books that take place out in space. And I started thinking about that. Yeah, and you know, when I was younger, I used to love space operas, books that took place out in space. So I thought, you know, there's quite a few books that I've read and enjoyed over the years that took place out in space. So that's what I'm doing today. So the first book I'm going to talk about is The Martian by Andy Weir. And this follows astronaut Mark Watley, who wakes up on Mars after being knocked out and severely injured by a sandstorm. But he's horrified to realize that his crew left him there, aborted the mission, and now are on their way back to Earth, assuming that he died. So then he has to somehow contact Earth to let them know he's alive. But the question is, how long will it take for a rescue team to reach him? And how long can he survive on Mars? So, so that was a fun book. So the next book in my list is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. This is one of my all-time favorite books. And this follows Arthur Dent, whose best friend, Ford Prefect, drags him away from Earth moments before its destruction. So Arthur then ends up following Ford throughout the galaxy and into all sorts of zany adventures, including quite an irreverent adventure with the president of the galaxy, his girlfriend, and a depressed robot. A robot who just walks around saying, "Oh, what's the use?" It's actually quite comical. But anyway, great book, Hitchhikers of the Galaxy. The next one on my list is Dune by Frank Herbert. Winner of the Nebula Award, Dune is set on the desert planet Arrakis and follows a main character named Paul, who, after his noble house is betrayed and his family destroyed, sets off on a journey of vengeance, where he is tasked with ruling an inhospitable world. And Paul ends up evolving into a mysterious man with a whole different identity, later known as Muad'Dib, and in so doing brings to fruition mankind's most ancient and unattainable dream. So this book is a story, kind of a blend of adventure and mysticism with themes of politics and environmentalism thrown in. The sequel to this, Dune Messiah, is also quite good. So the next book I'm going to mention, or should I say trilogy actually, is entitled The Foundation Trilogy by Isaac Asimov. And I used to be a huge Isaac Asimov fan when I was younger. Read a lot of his books, some of his even technical ones. So the first book in this trilogy is Foundation, which begins a new chapter in the story of man's future. So as the old empire crumbles into barbarianism throughout the million worlds of the galaxy, one man and his band of psychologists must create a new entity, the Foundation, dedicated to art, science, and technology at the beginning of a new empire. So I don't want to say too much about the second book, Foundation and Empire, and the third book, which was Second Foundation, because doing so might give away too much. But if you start with the first book, you'll no doubt want to continue on with all of threes. And actually, they're often sold as a package set. I think I got the omnibus of all three books bound together as one, the Foundation trilogy. But you know, I remember being so obsessed with this series at the time I read it, that I read them one right after another. And you know, I could almost do to reread those because it's been many, many years. And you know, I'm also going to toss in honorable mention of another Isaac Asimov book here entitled I, Robot, which just popped into my mind. And this is a phenomenal book about robotics, which might have been the first of its kind in the robot genre. So the next book I want to talk about is entitled Red Rising by Pierce Brown. So humanity has been divided into a system of colors, and the Reds are saddled with the responsibility of mining Mars in hopes of making the surface habitable. Now our protagonist, Darrow, is a Red who's proud of his role of making the future brighter for the next generations. And like most Reds, he works his ass off all day, toiling to make the surface of Mars livable for those generations to come. But as it turns out, Darrow and all the Reds have been betrayed. Mars' surface has been habitable for years, and vast cities and lush wilderness now spread across the planet. So this means that all this time the Reds have been exploited and ended up being nothing more than slaves for the decadent ruling class. Now Darrow is bent on working his way to the top of this caste system in search of justice, and ends up sacrificing everything to infiltrate the institute of the dominant gold caste, the pretty much brutal ruling class. Though to bring them down, he may have to become one of them himself. So this is also a trilogy, and actually thus far I've only delved into the first book, which I loved, but I definitely plan on finishing this series. And I'll probably reread the first book again. I actually got a copy of it in audio because somebody said the audiobook for it is phenomenal, and so I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, so I'll probably re-listen to the first one before diving into the second and third one. So the next book I have to mention is 2001, A Space Odyssey by Arthur C. Clarke. So how could I not include this classic? In fact, some people say that this book defined a new era of science fiction. So in this story, a group of astronauts, after having discovered a monolith transmitting radio signals buried under the moon's surface, embark on a mission to the outer edges of the solar system to investigate one of Saturn's moons where the radio signals are being received. But the mission falls apart, and the astronauts have a lot to contend with. For instance, there's HAL 9000, the artificially intelligent supercomputer that controls all their systems and is capable of the highest level of cognitive functioning that rivals and perhaps threatens the human mind. And then there's also the truth behind the society situated in the depths of our solar system. So yeah, so there are 4 books in this series that are all well worth the read, in my opinion. So I'm going to toss in another Arthur C. Clarke book here, or should I say series, and I'm going to go with the Rama series, with the first book being Rendezvous with Rama. So the story starts out when a 10 million ton celestial object that astronomers have dubbed Rama is hurtling through the solar system at an inconceivable speed. Then a space probe confirms that Rama is not a natural object, but rather an interstellar spacecraft. Both astronauts and scientists alike prepare for mankind's first encounter with alien intelligence, even though nobody knows who the Ramans are or why they've come. So I read this series several years ago and found it totally addicting. It's another 4-book series with a couple of additional ones thrown in, a couple of additional stories. It was like book 1.5 or 1.75 in addition. But yeah, this turned out to be one of my favorite sci-fi series. So number 8 on my list is the Star Wars trilogy by George Lucas, Donald Glut, and James Caan. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with this. So this follows Luke Skywalker, who's dreamed of adventures out among the stars and among alien worlds. But after an horrific event, he intercepts a message from a beautiful captive princess, who we later learn as Princess Leia, and the adventure of his life begins. Now, of course, the movies are well worth viewing as well. The 3 movies in this trilogy, and I loved all of them, in fact. Though now there are numerous prequels to Star Wars, as well as the recent sequel, The Force Awakens, with the novel having been written by Alan Dean Foster, which has also been made into a movie. I'm not sure if there are equivalent novels for the prequels. I never bothered looking into it. But I started out with the first three, which is A New Home, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. And you know, I actually wouldn't mind giving the books a reread. So number 9 on my list of 10 outer space books is entitled Illuminate by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. And this is the first book in the Illuminate Files trilogy and takes place in 2575 when two rival meta corporations are at war over a planet. So the action begins with an enemy fire raining down on a planet and causing our two protagonists having to fight their way to an evacuating fleet with an enemy warship in hot pursuit. And that is the least of their problems. A deadly plague has just broken out, and it's possible that the AI, which controls every aspect of their fleet, has gone rogue. So thus far, I've only read the first one, Illuminate, and I do have the other two on my shelf, which I need to finish soon because I love the first one so much. It was really a heart-in-your-throat sci-fi adventure that I absolutely adored. And the last book that I'm going to talk about is entitled Across the Universe by Beth Rivas. So this follows Amy, whose parents are important members of a mission to colonize a new planet. So they take Amy along for the ride. But the destination is far, far away. So she and her family are cryogenically frozen, supposedly for the next 300 years on the journey to the new world. But partway through the mission, about 50 years, I think, before the scheduled landing. So about, if I remember correctly, I think we're like 250 years in. Someone tries to kill her and in the process wakes her up from her sleep. So here she is, stuck in the middle of space, hundreds of light years from any solid ground, with a murderer in the mists and completely alone. Well, almost alone. There is someone who may be able to help her, but the question is, can she trust him? So this is really a kind of a claustrophobic read with a mixture of murder, mystery, in a dystopian world, with even a wee touch of romance thrown in, which all made for an excellent story. So did you like this video? If so, please click the like button below, as that really helps my channel out. So that about does it for 10 of my favorite books that take place in space. How about you? What are some of your favorites? Let me know in the comments. So that about does it for this video. I will talk to you all next time. Roger and out.